Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Football.
And welcome into Purple Access as we rotate our analysts, co-hosts. Of course, Chip Scoggins, the Star Tribune, and Tyler Forness, who joins us today. Vikings Wire, Wire.com. Also, the writing home of Sports Dad as well. Ross Brendel producing for us. And Forno, as we get into the discussion, here's what I want to start you off with, because I've got a question about this. Because, clearly the Vikings are going to be, and rightfully so, until we know what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins, going to be linked to quarterbacks in the first round, possibly the second round. But my question is this. As we start this process now, and you've got Senior Bowl coming up, you've got probably more importantly the Combine, the physicals that will be done there, and then the pro days. How much do you think this quarterback class is going to, not at the very top, but after that, fluctuate? And my main question is, it feels like to me, in seeing mock drafts thus far, Michael Penix has been all over the place. And look, he's got the two knees, ACL reconstruction, so there's a reason for that. But how much more do you think that's going to, especially in his case, fluctuate now as we do get into the key off-season dates that are to come before the draft?
No, get ready for a wild ride. You might as well board the Wild Thing at Valley Fair, because it's going to be a roller coaster. And the interesting thing about like that second tier of quarterbacks, because you have your top tier, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. The only way any one of them is falling down is if they get charged with a felony or there's some kind of degenerative body part that we just have no idea about. I don't see a situation where any of those guys falls out of the top 10 unless we see something extreme. So tier 1 is all set. Tier 2, you're going to have a lot of mixed opinions on all these guys. Bo Nix, I have a fourth round grade on him. I don't think he's a guy you want to project as an NFL starting quarterback. I see NFL.com's Lance Zierlein just post on Thursday morning that he believes he's a top 10 pick. JJ McCarthy, I have a mid-second on. Same with Michael Penix. Based on medicals, I'd feel comfortable taking him in the back end of the first round. Not everybody's going to be like that. And to me, that conversation is going to determine on your thoughts of these guys. And the skill set alone. So if you isolate the skill set and you don't talk about Michael Penix's injuries, first round caliber quarterback, like back in the first round, you trade up, you want that 5th year option. I think that's valuable. And I think it's a smart play. But you can't always look at things in a vacuum. You can't always look at things as, hey, it's just a play on the field. It's not. So if the medicals, they come back clean, you could see Penix going round 1, see him going around 2 or 3. I know a good friend of mine, NBC Sports' Connor Rogers, loves Michael Penix and believes he's a first round quarterback and thinks he's a phenomenal fit with the Vikings. I'm not quite on that same level, but I get the thinking. So over the course of the next few months, and it's something that I've been doing with Vikings Wire and our mock draft roundup, I take industry mocks from respected sites and people, and I collect them. So far, we have 39 mock drafts, 7 picks for Michael Penix, 9 for UCLA edge, Laiatu Latu. Both have massive medical concerns, but we don't know about how bad they are. We're going to find out with trickling out information.
Yep.
Because remember a couple years ago, Nevada quarterback Carson Strong, he was saying that his knees were fine. Half of them were saying they were a ticking time bomb. We're not going to truly know because everybody's going to want their own information out there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things track. And one of the reasons why I do the mock draft roundup, because it's interesting to see how things change throughout the course of that 4-month period. And I don't think there's going to be any certainty with this quarterback class in tier 2 until really close to the NFL draft.
Outside of the obvious with a guy like Penix, which is just the conditions of his knees and his body. Outside of that, as the system starts to play out and unfold, what do you think are the biggest question marks about tier 2? Like as we take the McCarthys and Penixes and to your point, Nix, as scouts start to watch them, what do you think they're going to see? And I guess more importantly, what do you think they're going to be looking for the most that maybe the game film does not show them?
Let's start with JJ McCarthy. The question is going to be, why didn't Michigan trust him more? And you could make the argument, and I think this will end up being the answer, because it's a Jim Harbaugh coach football team. Harbaugh has never truly trusted a quarterback to be the alpha. He really didn't do it with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck just played great in his system. And it's about the team. It's about power football, running the ball, play great defense, and your quarterback is almost like an extra. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just how he likes to play football. And there's merit to that. Like JJ McCarthy only played, he only threw the ball 10 times in a 9-point win against Penn State, one of their like 2 biggest regular season games of the year.
Yeah.
Why didn't they throw the football? They didn't need to. The running game was dominant. So you look at that and you're like, okay, well, why didn't they really put the ball in his hands at all? It's because they didn't have to. And when he actually was asked to do some things against Alabama, against Washington, he played well. So it's trying to contextualize, can he actually be that alpha? I think he can, but it's easy to look at the whole picture and be like, there's just too many question marks. I want to stay away. Penix, to me, it's about the mechanics. If you take the injuries out of it, he is not consistent with his footwork. He has a little bit of a sidearm delivery, which when you throw sidearm and you don't have great mechanics, that ball can easily sail. That's why you want like the 3-quarter delivery. Like over the top is just like straight over. Not a ton of guys do that anymore, especially with the off-platform stuff. So you see a lot of 3-quarter releases. Mm-hmm. Like sidearm, it just presents problems when you're not mechanically sound. And Penix isn't mechanically sound. He doesn't transfer his weight great. He will oftentimes just have feet that aren't completely situated. And sometimes it just doesn't matter. But everything starts with your base. Everything starts with your feet. If your feet are in sync and proper, your arm will follow. It also helps you generate arm strength. Penix has a great arm, but he could have a better one just by doing some of those little things. And that's going to be a big question. And with Nix, it's about contextualizing the offense he ran at Oregon. Why was he running such a basic high school offense?
Right.
Why was he only doing one read and go stuff? Why wasn't he doing full field progressions? Why weren't they trusting him to attack the intermediate levels of the field with any form of consistency? Why was he throwing an insane amount of screen passes? His average depth of target was 6.9 yards. That's low on the NFL end. In the college end, all of his contemporaries in this class are at 10 or higher. So you're looking at it. Why is he doing all these things? Why are all these things manifesting the way they are? To me, it's because Nix can't do a lot of those things that you want. In college, you try and make everything easy. But if you have the guy, you can add more complicated stuff. And that more complicated stuff can really help take things to the next level. Because how college spacing works, it's so easy to manipulate space, get great skill players in there and let them go. But if you are a great quarterback, you can elevate that. That's not Bo Nix. Bo Nix is not a guy who's going to elevate everything around you. His best case scenario is he gets Kyle Shanahan. And Shanahan just say, do a 7-step drop, throw it here, let Deebo Samuel do things. That's going to be Bo Nix's best case scenario in the NFL, in my opinion. And that, like, you're going to have to answer those questions with all three of these guys. Then you throw in Tulane's Michael Pratt, who is a true dual threat guy, but he does not have the arm strength to drive it to the outside numbers. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Teddy Bridgewater in that sense, where he's got all the tools, he's got the intelligence, he's got the legs. He's a better runner than Bridgewater was. But the lack of arm strength to be able to drive it is going to limit him in the NFL.
Interesting stuff. So of all of the potential deficiencies that you just brought up, what do you think is the easiest to ultimately correct, like with Penix and the mechanics? How easy is that to correct? And which of the guys that you just also broached do you think Kevin O'Connell would have the best chance of working with and actually, from what we know about them and have seen, fit into what O'Connell does offensively?
See, the thing with with Penix and his mechanics, I don't know if they can be fixed.
Okay.
Because I don't know how much of that is injury related. None of it might be injury related. It's a variable. He's 2 years away from his last torn ACL. And when you're 2 years out, like theoretically, everything should be 100%. Everything, you should be able to have it fixed. Like I had an emergency appendectomy and I've got a giant scar down my abdomen. But within 6 weeks, I was sitting up normal. I was walking normal. You have that kind of trauma. Eventually, you just start to regain your normal senses. Well, in this situation, he should easily have been able to regain all of those pre-ACL tear mechanics and those little nuances. Well, why isn't his footwork crisp? Why isn't he having that kind of weight transfer that you want to see? Why does he still have problems with his base? And you have to ask, is it related to the torn ACLs? If it is, that's a big problem. If it's not, you're still looking at a 24-year-old quarterback who you basically have to spend all of mini camp, training camp, really working and focusing on his footwork. And if you have to focus that much on his footwork, you might not be able to get him into like week 6 if you're planning on playing him his rookie year. So there are variables like that to look at, and it's a tough one. It really is. I'm not quite sure if you can trust the guy like Penix to be able to make that kind of leap and be the guy right away. But then if you're bringing him in to be a developmental guy, he's going to be 25 years old his first year as a starter, where I was a little less concerned about that with Jaren Hall because, one, he's a 5th-round pick. 2, a 2-year Mormon mission means 2 less years of football hits on your body. That makes a difference for football players because it's almost like 2 years of rest in comparison to, the daily grind of football. So I have concerns that what you see is going to be hard to really truly develop and take to another level. And you know what? On the flip side, it could just be that the coaches just didn't work with him on the things that the NFL coaches would. So it's all variables and all questions that this coaching staff is going to have to answer. And all I can go off of is what I see on film and conjecture and projection, because that's what makes this business so hard. That's why you get things wrong so often, because you have such incomplete information and you can only go off what you have.
So from a starting point of Nix and McCarthy, okay? If you're a scout, if you're a team, and you like both players but have questions, what scares you more? Bo Nix, who clearly has talent but wasn't asked to your point, wasn't asked to do a lot. So there's not a lot on film that you look at and say, oh, okay, You might like what he did, but again, to your point, it's very simple. Or McCarthy, who wasn't necessarily trusted. Which scares you off more as a scout?
I think it's about contextualizing the why behind both of those. And when I look at Bo Nix, he's 23 years old, which to me, that doesn't matter too much. What does matter to me is he has the most starts in the history of college football. And this is what he is. I don't think you're going to be able to develop that player very much. JJ McCarthy, 2-year starter, turns 21 on the day this drops, Saturday the 20th. He's going to be 21 years old. That, to me, it's going to be a lot easier to develop him because I believe at the college level, McCarthy has 27 or 28 starts, and he's lost one game, and that was against TCU in the college football playoff last year. I feel pretty good about that. I really do. And I feel good about being able to develop him like in a vacuum, because you have a younger player who has less tread on the tires per se, because it's not just about how many games you've played, how many passes you've thrown in games. Each practice you're throwing like 100, 200 balls. And then not to mention your own training on the side. Like when I remember when Tim Tebow came out, everybody was talking about the arm motion, and they said it takes around 10,000 reps to fully change some of those mechanics, because you're dealing with muscle memory and you're dealing with throwing consistently. It's a difficult thing to do. So when you have a younger guy who has that less tread, so to speak, it's going to be a lot easier to change some of those things and modify it for the next level. I would rather take the bet on McCarthy over Nix because of some of those reasons. And also, I just think McCarthy's a better player. I just don't believe in Bo Nix whatsoever.
Forno, on a lot of these players, there's still a lot of great evaluation time with the Senior Bowl coming up. Throw in the East-West Shrine game just a few days before that. I spent a good chunk of my Saturday watching the Hula Bowl go Team Ina. I think we had Brian Billick and Mike Smith coaching teams last Saturday. How much do you value the games versus the practices? And when you look at a Hula Bowl or an East-West Shrine game, how valuable is that in comparison to the Senior Bowl, which always seems to steal all of the headlines when it comes to these postseason all-star games and showcases?
First off, Ross, welcome to being a sicko. Only sickos watch the Hula Bowl. It's just Ross on a different level. Look, I'll be honest, I don't really value the games at all. All-star games, everything you're doing is very vanilla. Everything you're doing is basic stuff because you don't exactly have a lot of time. And this will be my 4th year at the Senior Bowl. I'll be there Monday through Thursday because I don't stay for the game. It's money out of my pocket. And quite frankly, you don't get a lot from the game. You just don't. So when I'm looking at it, I want to see how these guys interact against their contemporaries. It's about looking like you belong and looking like you're at the top. And like you can see things that you wouldn't necessarily see on film because it's a different environment and you're doing different things. So guys who are particularly, let's talk about air raid wide receivers. You're running based on timing and you're running a very simple route tree. That's a lot of hitches, a lot of outs, a lot of drags, a lot of goes. You're not doing a lot of nuance. It's very structured, very strict in how you're supposed to execute some of these things. So when you get to the Senior Bowl, hey, line up against that dude and get open. You can show a little bit more of what you have. And a guy like Tank Dell last year, 5'8", I think he was 163 pounds. He looked like the best separator at the Senior Bowl because of how quick he used his feet. He was able to get off the line of scrimmage without seeing press coverage, which a lot of receivers in college don't see a ton of press coverage because of how defenses play and how they have to utilize spacing. So when you see press coverage, okay, this guy should just get beaten up because he's so small. Well, he's so quick and nimble off the line of scrimmage, it didn't matter. And he was just able to create separation right away. Goes to the NFL, looks like an all-rookie team member before he breaks his leg. So you can see some of those things. And you see how they do against players who are better because you can go up levels of college football. There's a running back from New Hampshire, Dylan Laube, who is a true dual threat out of the backfield. Caught 68 passes this year, ran for nearly 1,000 yards on top of that, had about 1,500 all-purpose yards. You can see a guy like that go up in a level of competition and how he's going to match up and how he's going to look. And I take so much value from practices, but at the end of the day, you have to contextualize it with the film. Okay, he's doing this in practice. Why wasn't he doing it on film? Oh, he wasn't asked to do it? Okay, so now you have an answer. Or, hey, he was doing this on film, but he didn't do it in Mobile. Okay, why? And it's just another piece to the puzzle. I put practices about 5 to 10% of like a total evaluation because you can learn a lot. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing it during the games and you can't answer like, oh, this is just a scheme thing, then you have an issue. And that to me raises a little bit of a red flag. And it's just another part of the process. Like the combine is probably about 10% of it. From our perspective, from the teams, it's probably like 30 or 40% because you get FaceTime. You get to talk to them. You get to know them as a person, as a human. And you get the sense of who they are, what they're going to be, and how they're going to assimilate into a locker room setting. That matters more than just the overall testing, because testing, you just need to make sure that you're a good enough athlete. Like Puka Nacua tested okay-ish, and he was like a second-team All-Pro as a rookie, fifth-round pick. Like some things matter and some things don't, and they're all just pieces to a giant puzzle.
Yeah, the 40 is my favorite and or least favorite thing, because football speed isn't, consistently how quick can I run in a straight line. It's how how well can I run my routes? And those routes, by the way, stop and start at times. You touch on the combine thing, and I think this also takes place at the Senior Bowl, but with a much smaller class, Tyler. And that's this. The FaceTime, to me, is so intriguing because teams obviously value that, but they can't get fooled. And I know that there has long been a frustration, too, that the kids, the draft prospects, are coached up, by their agents. And so, like, the teams are always concerned about how much coaching, like, are we getting the real answers from the kid, or does the kid sort of know what the questions are going to be? And I thought it was the one thing that Spielman did that I found intriguing was back in the day, he would have the top 30 thing. He would have all the players come in at that time to Winter Park at once and spend time together and eat together to get a feeling for how they acted, not with the executives and coaching staff, but with each other. So, like, I do think that the FaceTime thing is really intriguing because it's important, but it also has to be taken with a grain of salt or at least a skeptical eye of what you're learning about the person as opposed to what the person's trying to be if they're trying to be too polished.
Absolutely. And when you go to the Senior Bowl, they have a media breakfast, which I find hilarious. The media breakfast is at like 4:00 this year. It's not in the morning, which I'll be honest is better for us. But it's just funny that it's still called the media breakfast. So when you talk to these guys, you can tell that they're coached up and you can tell that they have like canned answers. It's almost like politicians at a town hall meeting. You have your stump speech. You have the answers that you give from that stump speech, and it feels more robotic than it feels natural. And every once in a while, you'll get somebody who will just talk to you candidly and talk to you off the cuff and just be genuine and honest. And sometimes you have to go off the record for that. I got some good off the record stuff from a player last year just because I was like, look, man, I just want this off the record. I'm just genuinely curious. And then they gave me some real answers. But these guys are taught to kind of be robotic and not do that because you have a lot of inexperienced people who get credentialed for the Senior Bowl. You have a lot of people who are asking weird questions. But then you'll get Will McDonald, who is the first round pick for the New York Jets, who literally stood around and talked about anime with just analysts for about 25 minutes. He was just having a blast. So it's cool to see some of that, but you also have to understand that to us, like, we're going down for content because that's what our job and responsibility is.
Sure.
To them, this is a business interview. Right. It's a 4-month long process that's draining and just really difficult. So you have to just kind of keep one eye open, per se. You have to let them say their piece, but also understand I'm not going to call it BS, but a lot of it's not going to be truly genuine because they have to be careful on how they say things.
So last thing, it looks like Bran Flores will be back as the Vikings DC Forno. If you were Bran Flores and you're working today and you take in a list of positional personnel needs to Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, give me your top 3 things from a position of need. And let's assume for a second that Hunter comes back. So you do have a really good edge there, but defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, safeties, which he clearly has used as hybrid linebackers too, cornerback. What would be your top 3 areas as this process gets started if you're Flores and had a wish list just from a personnel standpoint?
Absolutely. So I actually broke this down on the Real Forno show, which you can check out on my YouTube channel, Vikings First and Goal. And I also wrote an article about it, just kind of breaking down the overall needs. So the top 3 overall needs, it's quarterback, defensive line, edge rusher, 1, 2, 3. And if you're just going to talk about defensive positions, I want a big boy nose tackle, I want a 5 technique, and I want an edge rusher. Those are the 3 individual spots that I need filled. Harrison Phillips, really good football player. He is playing out of position. He is not a nose tackle in this style of defense. And he played admirably well, and he looked really good at times. But he's also not playing the best position for him. To me, that matters, because if you're not playing at your optimal spot, that's going to impact you and how well you can do moving forward. So getting a big boy, a 350-pound nose tackle, the old school guys, Pat Williams, the Ted Washingtons, like we had one in Michael Pierce, and Michael Pierce did not want to play in the Ed Donato defense. Understandable. He goes to Baltimore. He's still really good.
Right.
You got to get that guy. There's a couple guys in this draft. One of them's Tavondre Sweat from Texas. You can get him in the second round. Not the sexiest pick, but sometimes you have to eat your vegetables. And this is going to be an eat your vegetables kind of pick, because it's going to make an impact on Phillips. It's going to make an impact on the running game. And he has a little bit of pass rush prowess too. You also want to find a 5 technique, because I think you still want Harrison Phillips as a true defensive tackle, where you get like Cam Hayward for the Steelers plays that defensive end. You line up right over the tackle. You're not an edge rusher, but you're not truly like a real interior guy. It's that different level. Like Everson Griffin played 5 technique for the Vikings, but it was in a 4-3, so he was still an edge guy. But you play that spot, 300-pounder, you get that guy. Like it's what Dean Lowry was expected to do essentially. But Lowry, like the idea of Lowry is fine, but he did not play very well, and then he tore his pec. So you get that guy in there, and then you need to find an edge rusher. I truly think Danielle Hunter's staying. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think both sides are motivated to get a deal done, and I think they're going to get it done before he hits free agency. There is a part of me that believes he wants to hit free agency, but then you hear him talk. He's like, I want to be here. I want to stay here. When Danielle talks, everything that comes out of his mouth just feels genuine. It feels real. It doesn't feel like coach speak. It doesn't feel like he's blowing smoke. It just feels like he's a guy that really doesn't want to talk to the media. And when he does, he's just going to be honest with you. So I believe he's staying. You still have to find that other guy. DJ Wanham, free agent. Marcus Davenport, free agent.
Yep.
No matter what you think about either of those guys, they're still gone. And you have to find that guy opposite. Pat Jones, he's fine, but he's not really at a starter level right now. Could he get there? Maybe. But at this point in time, I don't believe he's going to. So you have to find that guy. Is that guy in free agency? Is that guy at 11? Because there is a decently sharp drop-off after that top tier of edge, and it's going to be harder to find one later in the draft. But then what do you do with quarterback? In my opinion, free agency is for filling needs. The draft is for finding talent, and you just figure it out later, because talent is what's most important, and you don't want to force a need.
Ross, final thoughts, questions from you?
I'm all over a defensive tackle. I think that's a massive issue for this team. Not only is running the ball an issue, stopping the run is an issue. I would be all over that and for that. And I do want to circle back really quickly to when we talked about the postseason all-star games. I think what hurts is the average fan, and I don't mean that as a negative term, but the average fan really only sees those games if they choose to watch them. So they don't see the practices. They don't see all the interviews. So you might watch a game and go, well, this guy's not very good. Then you see your team drafts him and you get super upset. So when it comes to this, I love exactly what you talked about, Forno. You have to take everything, you have to take all the ingredients and make it one piece of the pie or one whole pie, right? You have to take the practices, you have to take the film, you have to take the interviews, you have to take their game performance. And by game performance, I mean in season. So I thought that was a brilliant answer. I hope everybody got as much out of that as I did. I really appreciate you breaking that down for us, for those who don't get there and are just the sickos watching the game. And yes, let's go out and get a run stopping tackle, but also still find the, in my opinion, the future at quarterback one way or another.
Absolutely. Now, when it talks, I'll wrap this up because I know we want to get out of here. But when you're talking about evaluations, you have to start with the film. Then you have to look at some of the deep analytical numbers that contextualize the film. And you can see, okay, he does better at this than I thought, or he's not quite as good as it, because numbers help you contextualize what you see. And then you do all the variable stuff. You do the Senior Bowl, you do the combine, because at the end of the day, if they can't play football but they test well, it really doesn't matter because you can't play football. Like there are guys who test really well. There are track guys who try to come in and play. They're not very good because it's just different. So everything needs to be contextualized and put into like this vat. And that vat is going to tell you whether you think they're going to be worth a certain price or not.
You stir it all up, Forno?
It's hocus pocus too, baby. Let's go.
And then you pray a lot. Great stuff, boys. Purple Access, we're done. Back next week, obviously. And also check out all of the Score North shows. Purple Daily, Mackie and Judd, Twin Show, Flagrant Howls, Judd's Hockey Show. I could go on and on, but I won't. See you guys later.